Okay, let's go.
It's time for Be Picked. When you're ready to move from clicks to clients, learn to be picked.
Welcome to Be Picked, the podcast for busy professionals who are trying to build and maintain their practices. I'm your host, Andrew Kolsky. Today, we are talking with Hussain Shah, who is the founder and principal of Marcom 247, which is a digital marketing consultancy. So, Hussain, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. Great to be here. I appreciate the audience. Thanks so much. So, my name is Hussain Shah.
Yeah,
Uh,
please.
Thanks. My name is Hussain Shah. I've spent about 20 years, and I got the gray hairs to show for it in digital marketing, specifically in enterprise and government spaces, where the sales cycle is long, trust is everything, and buying decisions are never made on impulse. We go through.
Yeah. And I mean, you said the magic word in there, trust. And trust is such an incredibly important part of a hiring decision. And I think a lot of people, don't recognize how important that is when it comes to their digital footprint. So,
Absolutely.
The whole concept here behind this podcast is about long-term growth and sustaining your practice. We're not interested in those short, quick wins because those are nice, but that doesn't build a successful practice.
Exactly.
And in order to build a successful practice, in my opinion, credibility is such an important piece. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree, disagree, why or why not?
110%. So I think there's a huge credibility gap in professional services marketing. I mean, a lot of it is basically we're not selling a widget, a box. We're selling our professional expertise. So yeah, absolutely. So the moment when someone is Googling a lawyer or a consultant to actually picking up the phone, there's a mile of what I call quiet due diligence. So that once I see it, they go through your LinkedIn, they go through your digital footprint, they go through your content. That's where, this works. And that's where that credibility gap gets filled or not filled.
Wow. Just from that statement alone, I bet several listeners just got this big drop in their stomach because they're thinking to themselves, what digital footprint? I don't have anything online. I don't even know where to start to put stuff online.
Yeah. And fortunately that's true. And so if we think about like the content to go online, I think there's a transformation that has happened in the last several years, and it's really has really accelerated in the last, I say, 6 months to a year, where content for professional services now is now trust infrastructure. It's not really content marketing; it's trust infrastructure. I mean, think of it this way: the content you put online, it's basically working 24/7, whether it's your LinkedIn profile or your blog posts or whatnot. The question is, has your firm or your company coached that content to get the job? Because it's working 24/7 interviewing for positions. So yeah, absolutely. You have to build that content infrastructure and treat it as such.
Mm-hmm. So, I spend a lot of time myself online looking at the types of questions that attorneys, for example, ask about marketing their practice. And I read a lot of things on Reddit and different forums on the internet. And I consistently see people, trying to be helpful. And the response that I see over and over and over again is, oh, you got to have good SEO, good SEO, good SEO. You get good SEO and the whole world is going to be beating a path to your door. And while SEO is certainly important, I'm not so sure that I agree that the world is going to beat a path to your door. Can you kind of give us a perspective, especially today, SEO versus AI search and all the different types of things that are happening online today? Give us a perspective so that we even know what we're talking about.
Absolutely. That's a great question and gets asked a lot and is often misunderstood or misused. SEO, search engine optimization, is the bedrock of basically how content is organized, indexed, and found for an impression or a query. It's basically the meta tags and meta descriptions and H1, H2, etc. Foundational work you have to do. The thing is, SEO evolved into what became AEO, or answer engine optimization. And we all saw that. Like I Google, summer motorcycle helmets, which I need to get right now. I get like, what are the characteristics of a good helmet? What are the safety standards? And the people ask. It also has like a little answer up top, the AIO overview.
Mm-hmm.
That was the evolution that went from SEO to AEO. Now, there's methodologies and things you can do to get into it, and I'll talk about that because there's consistency in this. And then the next one was basically GEO, generative engine optimization. So think of it this way: the SEO is gets you found, right? Like you're in that list. AEO gets you picked because you've mimicked their answer, and you could spend $0, and if you're in the people also ask question box or in the knowledge graph, you just beat everybody with a sponsored search. GEO goes beyond that. And it's not just being picked. You're part of the conversation and their understanding of a concept.
Hmm.
Now, all three basically work on one top of the other. So if you have good, solid SEO, you can move to what's called schema or microdata to start targeting FAQ questions. You can move further into managing your relationship with generative crawlers. And then you're kind of going across all three levels. Very important to it because nowadays the competition is such that you can't ignore it.
Right, right. All right, so let me break some of this stuff down because, just like a lawyer speaking lawyers speak, we've got a marketer here giving us a lot of marketing terms, and for the audience, I'm sure their heads are spinning like, oh my God, what is he talking about with schema and all these other things? So let me start with the first part. So you talked about AEO or SEO, AEO, GEO. So can you give us a little bit more in terms of examples?
Like,
So, let me give you my understanding and then you expand upon it. So SEO is those terms and things that people look for when they're searching for something on the internet. And you've got to have SEO terms on your content so that it matches so that they find what they're looking for. AEO moves into the answer option where people are asking questions. Can I discharge my student loans in bankruptcy or whatever it may be?
exactly.
And now you've got to be able to provide content that answers those questions in order to show up in that search box for the AI.
Exactly.
GEO, give us an example of what that looks like beyond the AEO.
Absolutely. How about we take a piece of content, I figure a a a pretend piece of content we both everyone knows about, like say a blog post.
Okay.
You say you wrote a blog post. Now the purpose of blog post for professional services is to get it ranked and found for a concept, say estate planning. You wrote a blog post, top 5 pitfalls in estate planning or something, right? Like good solid title. Now the
Sure.
top 5, top 10 is part of the SEO layer in that, because we all know as soon as you put a top 5, top 10 on any piece of content, its probability of being clicked goes up by like 50% because people love that stuff. It's defined time, defined effort. So say you wrote that blog. SEO layer, you're gonna pick that cool title, do that top 5, top 10 title, then you're gonna write a meta description for it. You're gonna take the major keywords and you put them into H1, H2, so that they get high priority, like estate planning pitfalls or estate planning lawyers or something like that. That's all the SEO layer.
Mm-hmm.
Now we move to the AEO layer, the answer engine optimization. What you want to do is say, all right, let me take the 5 keywords that are major, that are part of this estate planning blog, and let me Google them and find out whether ranking answers questions. So if I Google anything, any any topic, there's like those people also ask
Mm-hmm.
section that shows up. You want to get into that section. Now here's the trick: you can be inspired by the questions, but you can never copy their answers. But you take the couple of questions that are top ranked, and you say, all right, at the end of my blog, I'm going to write a little section called FAQ. I'm going to take those 3 questions, always keep limited to 3, and I said 3 by 300. So 3 questions, and the answer has to be about 300 odd characters, like think 2 tweets long, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you have got the meta descriptions, you've got the H1, H2 for the SEO layer. Now for the AEO layer, you're putting in the FAQs, and you're putting in the ones that are popular, and then to manage that on the back end, just like you manage the meta descriptions on the back end, to manage this on the back end, you're going to use what's called schema or microdata. It's its own little thing. There's schema generators you can Google, and there are many good ones. Most sites, like if you have WordPress or you have Yoast, or if you're familiar with Yoast, Yoast has a built-in schema manager. What it does is it takes each one of those and classifies it. The big difference is meta description is a claim, microdata is a declaration, much more powerful. So
Hmm.
now you're increasing your probability of showing up in not only that people also ask, but the knowledge panels about a question. So now let's go up a level. Of course, I'm running through this pretty fast. There's other things
Sure.
too. Now let's go up a level to the GEO, or the generative engine optimization, where you want to be part of the conversation, the one that is referenced as a trust link. So for example, if I typed in estate planning, right? I want to do estate planning for my father, like hypothetically as a question. And I get the little answer box from AIO overview, right, in Google in this example. And I do the deep search and it'll list out all the sources it used to say this is the right answer.
Right.
You want to be that citation, that thing that it learned from it and said, ah, yes, this is the estate planning pitfalls. And it says, oh, yeah, estate planning is complex in Virginia, or it's not. I don't know actually. But here are the pitfalls in Virginia for estate planning, blah, blah. You're specific, you're targeted, you're meeting that thing. And because you have schema and you have good SEO, you're increasing your probability of both traffic and citations in the answers. Your probability of then being picked up by the engines goes up that much more. So that's kind of what GEO is. Basic on the technical side, what you want to do is you want to open up your site's content, certain content for citation. Now, the trick is, especially for professional services companies, is you don't want to open up your site for training or crawling for that purpose. You want to open it up for citation. So, for example, if I look at, New York Times or Gartner or any big knowledge bank, they'll block all crawlers from training on their content, but they'll do it for citation. So what you have to do for, say, a law firm is to be like, all right, we're going to open up this section and this section. We may not want to open up these sections. So managing that geo relationship, does that help?
It does. And, I'm trying to listen to it as I was before I knew any of this stuff, and here I was, a professional service provider, just trying to figure out how do I get myself out there, and it is absolutely overwhelming the amount of opportunities on the internet. And it's like, well, do you have to focus on everything? Where do you focus? How do you focus? And now I hear all these technical terms, SEO and AIO and GEO, and it's like my entire life could be spent just trying to do this stuff, but I got to run a law practice.
Exactly.
So, you know, in the beginning, if I'm just trying to get myself started, where do I start? What do I focus on first?
So that's a great question. And there are two things that are going your way right now in this unique time in our industry or in the world. One is your ability to put out content and to put out expertise is infinitely more amplified by AI. What used to require, like I've been in marketing way too long. So it's basically Google Analytics got born, basically. What used to require 5 years ago a dedicated 2, 3 person social media and a content manager and this, a one-man team can literally do this with AI if they're smart. If they follow a couple of smart rules, they can totally do it because AI is what it's doing is it's amplifying scale at unbelievable speeds.
Hmm.
So one is to use AI smartly, not as what it's called AI slop, which is basically generic content going out. Second thing is AI slop or that mass content that's being produced by everybody actually works in your advantage if you're smart about it. Because the thing is, AI slop or mass generic content is basically one all very similar and it's all very generic. If you just step in and put about an hour more effort and say, or 10% more effort and say, all right, let me get to the specifics. What are the estate planning pitfalls in Virginia for couples with whatever no children or with adopted children or something like specific scenarios. As soon as you do that, you just jumped about the slot. So if you add that with the first thing about amplification, you have a lot of power. So just remember, go a little above what's the generic and amplify and integrate and amplify your AI. You'll have advantage.
Right. Right. So I'm gonna add a piece in there, or I'm not really adding. I'm just amplifying what you're saying here. One of the things that I learned, and this is because I wear the hat of an attorney, I wear the hat of a mental health professional, and I wear the hat now of a marketer. And
And
they
a
all,
super cool guy, and a super cool guy.
well, I appreciate that. But they all converge. And here's what I mean by that. The thing that I have learned through all of this work is that at the end of the day, the one thing that clients are looking for at the end of the day is comfort. They want to be comfortable. And they have a problem. And let's say in this case, you're talking about estate planning. So I am an adult child. I have a aging parent who is ill health, and we never got our paperwork together, and we want to make sure we do a proper estate plan. And it is keeping me up at night, very uncomfortable, in fear that, oh my God, we haven't really talked about this. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going to happen to, the house, the money, the whatever. And so I want to comfort that fear. I need to feel comfortable. And so I go into searching online. Now, do I search online for an estate attorney? Maybe, if I understand what that is. But really what I'm searching for is, my parents are elderly. I'm not so sure how much longer they're going to be here. We don't have an estate plan. What do I do? They're going to be asking the question that leads to their comfort, because as soon as they find someone who says, don't worry about it, we got you covered, we can explain it to you, it's not as hard as you think, my anxiety goes way down. That's the professional that I'm going to hire, not the one who told me that he went to the best schools and has all these awards and diplomas, which is great and wonderful, but it doesn't answer my question.
Oh my God, you've hit on two very important topics, professional services. One is self-medication. The whole thing about the internet is we're self-medicating with knowledge now, right? Like it used to
Mm-hmm.
be, I had to go to a car dealership to see what the Jeep Wrangler's miles per gallon is and whether the Wrangler is good for me. I know all that I need to know about the Jeep Wrangler in one night of self-medication. And estate planning, same thing. I can go through the whole process of, okay, I got this. What is estate planning? What does it mean for me, my parents? Whether they have dementia or maybe not, or whatever, like the medical issues, blah blah. I'm self-medicating, just like you are at night. You're self-medicating. Content infrastructure or the trust infrastructure is basically working 24 hours to do that. Second, very important thing you touched on is in any B2B or any professional services sale, we know, for example, the statistics that 85% of the decision buyers will go after the person who added value, not discovery, added value to their self-medication. So if I just say, oh yeah, I have, a degree from a very cool university, great. Versus if I say, yes, we actually have a practice. Here's a little guide for estate planning. Here's what we do. Here's our process. Here's an FAQ. Here's a short 5-minute video on it because video content goes more. Here's an infographic on it. Here's how our process and our bespoke procedure works with you. You're going to pick me.
Right, right. And that's really what this show is all about, is how do you go from, we say it on our website, how do you go from clicked to
Yeah,
picked?
exactly.
Because, you know, as good of an attorney as you are, there's other attorneys out there that are equally as good. So
Absolutely.
from a consumer's perspective, how do I pick attorney A versus attorney B? I'm going to find the one that makes me feel comfortable, that they can take away my pain and bring me
Exactly.
back to comfort.
Exactly. Self-medicate you the best.
Yeah. So, so let's transition that over now into like the whole new search that we've talked about already, the AI and things like that. And the thing that I talk with clients about is, you gotta understand what those questions are, like you were saying, the questions are that they're asking, and then answer those questions, not the questions you want to answer. You're not the client. Answer the questions the client wants to know. That's how you're going to get found on AI.
100%. And the thing is, we're living in the great data gold rush, I guess is a good word for it. AI engines, search engines will tell you what those questions are, what those queries are, without you spending a dollar. You can actually get the queries and questions for which your competitors are ranking for. You can try to compete for that space. So think of that content as, okay, here's the 5 questions related to this, is this. I'm going after this topical area. Here are the questions supporting it up. Here are the elements that make it good or bad. I'm going to do that now. And you can get those questions in that data relatively fast now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's talk about this then. As a busy attorney,
Hmm.
I'm trying to keep my practice going. I got all
Hmm.
sorts of stuff I got to worry about.
Yeah.
And now I'm hearing that I got to do this marketing stuff on
Hmm.
top of that. Isn't it good enough to just hire someone to build a fancy website for me and that'll take care of it?
No, that's also evolution in some ways. It used to be, up to 10 years ago for professional services and for conservative businesses like lawyers, it was like, yes, a website, it was essentially a billboard. You put up a billboard and it was very shiny and bright lights right on 66, and that was it, right? Thing is that billboard thing is gone. It's no longer a billboard. It is, I want as a consumer to almost have ownership or trust in it, and it has to be a living organism. So it has to be able to publish more, to move with the trends, able to see seasonality, able to change with laws, able to change with trends, and able to track my needs. The consumer has become much more demanding and kind of, in some ways, I hate to say it, kind of spoiled. It's almost like, what do you mean you don't know what I'm thinking? Like, okay. So and that's where data and the modern marketing trust infrastructure comes in. Is basically you got to move with it and make your site live. So content is one important thing. Credibility gap is important thing. How you use paid media is now completely overdone. So yeah, the website has to be a living organism. You have to treat it almost like an employee that is working 24/7 for you, and you got to coach it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then let's talk some details about that. What specifically can I do to keep my website as a living organism and deal with those credibility gaps? And how do I even know what my credibility gaps are?
That's a great question. So the first thing I always say is let's do a digital footprint audit. So remember, there's quiet due diligence that happens in professional services buying. Like they don't reach out to you and say, tell me about you and your practice. That's not really the thing here. They're going to do quiet due diligence, self-medicate themselves. All right, so what does your digital footprint look like? What does your LinkedIn profile look like? What does your published articles look like? What does your website's articles or solutions or practices areas look like? What does your other third-party credentials look like? What does your Google Business profile look like? Remember, a consumer who is engaging with a professional services or a lawyer is not going to know the industry little watering holes. They're going to go after the generic stuff, the big channels. What does your position look like on those? That's the first thing I would say. Figure that out. Then build a consistency layer on top of that and say, okay, across our digital footprint, here's the 5 things we're going to make sure everybody knows we're good at. We're good at A, B, C, D, and E. That's it. That's what we do. That's what we're really good at. And then we're going to build the the trust infrastructure to say, here's why we're good at it. Here's what we can regularly push on it. Here's what we can do on it. If you can just do those 3 things, you're gonna, one, build out your footprint better. Two, you're gonna control your internal resources burn because say you're a lawyer or a consultant. You're not a content producer per se, but if you can narrow the lane and you say, here's what we're going to do, and here's a process and a content calendar that says, I'm going to commit to this over the next, 60 days, things are going to start looking a lot more attainable. And
Mm-hmm.
then you layer on top of that the technology and AI layer. So, for example, you're supporting three different channels. Right? Say, for example, you wrote that blog on estate planning. I know we keep talking about it, but estate planning blog you wrote, and you
Sure.
put the FAQs in and did all that. So here's how social media math, as I jokingly say, goes. One piece of blog is one posting on 4 channels, right? That's on say LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, X, YouTube, whatever, right? Like one piece of content is one posting. You take that piece of content and say, all right, let me make an infographic out of this. Now it's 2. If you take another piece and say, all right, let me make a 90-second YouTube short out of it, that's 3. If you make a 6-minute explainer video out of it, that's 4. If I make a little soundbite out of it, that's 5. If I make a little top 10 list of pitfalls infographic out of it, that's 6. So now it's 6 times 4 channels. That's 24 postings. You just
Wow.
went from 4 to 24 postings on a single original piece of content. That's the other thing is people don't value their time in professional services. Writing a blog on like the pitfalls of estate planning, that's your expertise and your time being used. I'm saying maximize it. Make that 24 thing, flood the field. And the thing is, as long as you can use AI to amplify and create, but human in the loop. Anything that goes out must be touched by a human, and it's original content because the seed is original. So you have a better chance of getting over the slot.
So are you telling me that in order to get this stuff out there, I don't need to become the breakdancing lawyer for
No, no, no. The thing, that's the other thing. People are like, oh yeah, I need to be at this social media mean I need to be a TikTok. It's like, no, no. Nobody's going to hire a TikTok lawyer unless, whatever. But it's like, am I the source of trust for you? How do I become a
right.
source of trust? By LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube Shorts. Those are going to be the things that are going to get you.
Okay. So here's tell me if what I'm saying is true or false. There's one thing about people who look for trying to get this viral video content on the internet because they feel that, oh, well, that means that I'm really being seen, versus what we're talking about here in terms of building trust and credibility. You're not looking for a million views. You're looking for maybe 58 views of the right people that are looking for that information. That's a successful video. Is that true or
Exactly.
false?
Exactly. You're not looking for the flash in the pan. You're trying to bake a souffle here. Absolutely. Because that viral video, half the time you also got to remember when videos go viral, 90% of traffic is actually bots. They're just cataloging and doing that nonsense. None of them are buyers. And then it's like, oh, cool, let me look through that and like blah. And if I was like, say, for example, there's a viral video on a cell phone holder. Okay, purchase price is $4, risk is whatever. It's a 3D printed thing. That's that. Here in professional services, I am trusting you with like my livelihood and likely more. I'm not going to go 30 seconds. I'm going to mitigate. I'm going to make sure I know your process because I almost feel like I want to have ownership on you because I'm trusting you with my well-being here.
Right. And I liken it to investing. I can take money and put it into a slot machine and hope that I get a payoff. That's called advertising.
Exactly.
Um, or I can take that same $100, I can invest it into an exchange traded fund, and I can leave it alone. And then I can put $100 again next month and $100 next month. And in my retirement, I now have $1 million. The point with content is the same thing. The content that we're talking about building is called evergreen, meaning everything you put out there continues to stay there and then build on itself and build on itself and build on itself. And it's always there and it's always available versus the breakdancing lawyer, haha, funny man, gets a bunch of views and then it's gone. So we're talking about investing in yourself. We're not talking about some, quick flash in the pan thing.
Exactly. 100% agree with you because the investment inevitably is a relationship. And that's a professional services relationship. We're investing, we're building a relationship, and we're going to have that trust. And that's what goes through the thick and thin.
Right. Right. Wow. I mean, we talked about a lot of concepts and things here, and I can, look, I do this all the time and I'm overwhelmed. I can only imagine someone who doesn't, is at step one trying to figure out all this stuff. And the reality is that, you cannot physically run your business, especially like a law firm or a therapy practice or a dental practice, whatever your professional practice is, you can't run your practice and be a full-time marketer. But at the same time, if you're a small practice, hiring a full-time marketer might get to be more expensive than you can handle. And you got to balance all these things. What can you afford? What do you need to be out there? And so by effectively creating the appropriate evergreen content, and you don't need to be on every single channel. Pick
Exactly.
where your audience is going to be most, right?
100%. Know your channel of optimal resistance. Absolutely. 100%. And I think you bring up a great point about you're starting out, you're small. You may not, you definitely don't want to be starting a relationship with an agent's right off the bat. I personally always say for professional services, the first thing is know thyself, the digital footprint. What is your digital footprint? and then know thy customer. All right, here's my digital footprint. Here's what I need to make this better. Here's what my customer ideally is looking for. Again, this is not rocket science. Here's what they're looking for. Once you have step one and step two, the content, if you just build good content and follow simple things like aim small, I'm going to focus on LinkedIn and YouTube or Facebook and free channels. And I want to be known for being a trusted source on those channels for these three topics. That's a great goal to start with.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that is a great point for us to end the podcast because we are out of time for today. Before I wrap up, I'll ask if you have sort of any final thoughts for the audience.
I think this is a please don't get overwhelmed by the AI content slop. Consistency pays off, persistence pays off as it has always paid. Consistency and persistence in this age and any age will pay off. Just gotta focus on here's who I am, here's where I want to be. Let me chart that little path.
And if somebody wanted to get in contact with you and Marcom 247, how would they do that?
Come on down to my website, marcom247.com, marketing marcom247.com. And my name's Hussain Shah. I'd love to help if I can.
Fantastic. Well, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us here and share all of these insights. And hopefully our listeners are learning more about what they can do and what might be, they might not be ready for yet, but what they can build towards. But the best place to start is here. That's all I can say. Start from the beginning.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Thanks. It was wonderful being here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And so for all of you listening, we have all sorts of additional podcasts and great guests and great information. You can find it all on www.bepicked.com, which is BE-PICKED.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we look forward to seeing you on a future podcast.
Thank you.
If you are enjoying this content, please like and subscribe. Thank you.